My name is Aurora, and today I am going to tell you a story that happened to me when I was already 59 years old, a story from a moment in life when we are already tired, but still have faith. This story is not a happy moment. I went through many sorrows, but, as I said, I never lost hope that everything could change. And yes, it changed, from despair to a millionaire life. It all started when my son Albert, already married with children, kicked me out of the house. We lived together, and I helped with the bills. On a very rainy day, I was very disappointed, but along with that bad news, I discovered that I could help a friend and earn millions. I'm happy to have you here. Every story is made with great care. Follow my story to the end and comment on which city you are watching me from. I would like to know how far my story has reached. On that same day, another piece of news reached me. I had already dedicated 28 years of my life to Mr. Almeida's company. 28 years of my life dedicated to that company. Waking up every morning at 5:30 a.m., preparing breakfast for Albert before leaving for work, coming back every afternoon with my hands stained with grease and my knees aching. 28 years believing that loyalty and hard work meant something in this world. Aurora, we need to talk. Mr. Almeida's words echoed in my head like funeral bells as I walked down the hall to his office. It was a Friday afternoon, and I already knew what was coming. In the last few weeks, I had seen how they fired my colleagues, one by one, women and men like me who had dedicated decades to that industrial maintenance shed, reduced to a simple line in the budget cuts. I sat down in front of his desk, my trembling hands clutching my purse. Almeida didn't even look me in the eyes when he handed me the envelope. Cost optimization, he muttered, as if that word could soften the blow. Your position as repair technician has been eliminated. You have 2 weeks severance pay, 2 weeks salary for a 59-year-old woman, $3,100 after taxes. That was what my 28 years of dedication were worth. The bus ride home seemed eternal. Every traffic light, every stop gave me more time to think about how I would tell Albert. My son had been tense in recent weeks due to his own financial problems. He had lost his job 5 months ago and had been isolating himself and playing online more than he should since then. I had helped him with the house expenses, $100 or $200 here and there, when I could afford it, but now I couldn't help anyone, not even myself. When I arrived at the small house where I lived with Albert and Helena, they were watching television. Helena continued watching TV. She didn't even look up when I walked in. The children, Pedro, 9, and Isabella, 7, ran toward me, as they always did. Grandma Aurora, shouted Isabella, hugging my legs. Her bright face was the only light on that dark day. Where is your father? I asked, ruffling his brown hair. Upstairs, talking on the phone with the landlord, Pedro replied with that seriousness that children sometimes have when they perceive adult tensions. I climbed the stairs with a heavy step, listening to Albert's agitated voice from the bedroom. The door was ajar, and I could hear fragments of the conversation. No, I can't make the payment this month. Yes, I understand it's the 3rd time. Please, I need more time. I knocked softly on the door. Albert turned around, the phone still glued to his ear, and signaled for me to wait. His face was red with frustration, and when he finally hung up, he stared at the phone as if it were his enemy. Mom, it's not a good time, he said without looking directly at me. Albert, I need to talk to you. My voice came out weaker than I had planned. He sighed deeply, as if my simple presence was an added inconvenience to his already complicated day. What happened now? I was laid off today. The words floated in the air. Albert was motionless for a moment, processing the information. Then, slowly, his expression changed from surprise to something that froze my blood. Fury. Are you serious? His voice became sharp. Just now when Helena is unemployed and I can barely pay the rent. It wasn't my decision, son. They eliminated my position. And what are we going to do now? He stood up abruptly, starting to pace the room. I can't keep this house by myself. Helena can't find a job. The kids need things for school. And now you. He stopped abruptly, looking at me with a coldness I had never seen in his eyes before. It was as if he was calculating something in his head, making calculations that didn't include me in the equation. Mom, he finally said, his voice dangerously calm. I need you to understand one thing. This house, this situation, I can no longer support someone who doesn't contribute. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Albert, I'm your mother. And I'm a father trying to keep a roof over my children's heads. His voice hardened. I've been thinking about this for weeks. Helena and I talked. If you can't pay your share, you can't stay here. My share. The words came out as a whisper. This is my house too. I've been helping with all the expenses. With your job. No job, no help. No help, he shrugged as if it were the most logical thing in the world. Outside, it started to rain heavily. I could see the drops falling beyond the bedroom window, accumulating on the ledge. The temperature had dropped dramatically that week, and the forecast had warned of an approaching storm. Are you kicking me out? My voice trembled. In the middle of a storm. Albert avoided my gaze. I'm not kicking you out, I'm just telling you the reality. I can't afford to keep another adult who doesn't contribute economically, but it's only temporary. I'll find another job. Mom, you're 59 years old. Who is going to hire you? His cruelty cut me like a knife. Be realistic. I stood there, feeling my world collapse piece by piece. This was my son, the boy I raised alone after his father disappeared when he was 5. The same boy for whom I worked double shifts, sacrificed my dreams, gave everything I had. You don't have to leave tonight, he continued as if it were a great concession, but I need you to find another place by the end of the weekend. The end of the weekend in 3 days. Mom, please, don't make this harder than it already is. I went downstairs in a state of shock. The children were playing in the living room. Helena was still on the couch, now trying a difficult level in the game. No one asked if I was okay. No one noticed that my world had just collapsed. That night, as I packed my few belongings into 2 old suitcases, I heard Albert talking on the phone with someone downstairs. Yes, I know it sounds harsh, but I can't support my mother indefinitely. No, she doesn't have savings. Of course it hurts me, but I have to think of my children first. Every word was like a slap. I sat on the edge of the bed where I had slept for the last 7 years since moving in with them after selling my small apartment to help them with the down payment on this house. That had been another of my contributions that they had apparently forgotten. On Saturday morning, as the rain continued to fall, Albert drove me to the bus station. There were no tears, no farewell hugs, just an uncomfortable silence as he drove through the wet streets. There's a homeless shelter downtown, he said without looking at me. Just temporarily until you get organized. A shelter? His mother couldn't believe what her son was saying. She, 59 years old, who had worked her whole life, who raised her children alone, who sacrificed everything for them, was now going to a shelter. He left me at the door, didn't even wait to make sure I went in, just nodded and drove away, leaving me standing there in the rain with my 2 suitcases and a broken heart. The shelter was packed. Women of all ages, some with children, some clearly mentally ill, all of us together in a large, cold space that smelled of mold and despair. They gave me a bunk bed in a room with 20 other women. The bed was hard, the sheets were rough, and the pillows smelled like someone else. That first night, lying on that strange bed, listening to the snoring and crying of the other women, I wondered how I had gotten there, how I had transformed from a respectable working woman in society into someone sleeping in a shelter. The next morning, I met Lucia. She was 60 years old, had lost her job as a clinic receptionist, and her son had kicked her out of the house. Our story was almost identical. "They don't value us until it's too late," she said while we drank the watery coffee they served in the cafeteria. "And when it's too late, they don't even care anymore." I spent a few days in that shelter. Those days seemed like an eternity. I looked for work every day, but Helena was right about one thing. No one wanted to hire a 59-year-old woman, with no connections, no special skills, just a long history at a job she had just been fired from. One afternoon, while I was sitting in the shelter lobby filling out job applications on an old computer, a woman approached me. Her name was Sophia, and she was a volunteer at a local biological research laboratory. "Excuse me for bothering you," she said gently, "but I couldn't help but notice that you look different from the others here." I was very curious, but I didn't know whether to be offended or grateful. "I work in a laboratory that is conducting a medical study. They are looking for participants for an experimental treatment. It pays $500. Yes, a lot of money. It was more money than I had seen in years of work, but experimental treatments sounded dangerous. "Is it safe?" I asked cautiously. "It has already passed all safety testing phases. Basically, they are studying how different genetic profiles react to a new compound that stimulates the production of a rare enzyme. You only need to give blood samples and undergo some exams. It takes about a month. A month of my life for $500 and a possible way out of the shelter." I had nothing to lose. The next day, I went to the laboratory. It was a clean, modern building in a better neighborhood of the city. Dr. Marina Castro, who was running the study, explained everything in detail. They were testing a new treatment for a rare neurodegenerative disease. They needed people with a specific genetic blood marker to compare reactions. "Your blood type has this genetic component, MGT4. It tested positive after analysis." She smiled. "That is very rare. Less than 1% of the population has this marker. You are extremely valuable to our study." Valuable. I hadn't heard that word applied to me in a long time. I signed all the papers and started the study the following week. In the first few days, it was simple. Blood drawing, physical exams, questionnaires about my health. They paid me half in advance, which I used to rent a small apartment in a beautiful neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it was mine. In the third week of the study, Dr. Marina called me to her office. There was another doctor there, Dr. Ronaldo Dantas, a specialist in genetics. "Aurora," they said. "We have a slightly unusual situation." My heart raced. Was something wrong with me? "No, Dr. Marina hurried. "Nothing is wrong with you. In fact, it's the opposite. Your blood tests showed something extraordinary. Your body produces the enzyme we are looking for in atypically high quantities." They explained to me that my enzymatic profile was exactly what they needed for a treatment they were developing. But there was more. A critically ill patient needed this enzyme immediately, and I was the only compatible match in the entire database. "He's a 72-year-old man," explained Dr. Dantas. "He is dying from a progressive muscular degenerative disease. Your specific enzyme is exactly what he needs. Without treatment, he has perhaps 2 months to live. And I can help him." My voice came out firmer than I felt. "Yes, but it would be a greater commitment than the original study. We would need to do regular extractions and infusions for 6 months. You would have to come to the clinic 3 times a week." I leaned back in the chair, processing the information. I was literally in a position to save someone's life. "The remaining payment of $250,000 will be paid to you by the patient." It was more money than I had earned in the last 10 years combined. "There's something else you should know," Dr. Dantas said softly. "The patient wants to meet you. He wants to thank you personally before we begin the treatment." The next day, they took me to a private room in the hospital. It was luxurious, more like a hotel room than a hospital room. And in the bed, connected to various machines but still with bright, intelligent eyes, was a man I recognized immediately. Ricardo Meneses, my first love. The man I had courted in school more than 40 years ago, the man I planned to run away with before my parents separated us by sending me to live with an aunt in another city. Aurora. His voice was weak, but unmistakable. My God, Aurora Camargo. Ricardo, I whispered, approaching the bed. You, how? How did I find you? He laughed softly, which triggered a cough. I didn't find you. Fate found us. When the doctors told me they had found a compatible donor, I never imagined, never dreamed it would be you. A woman entered the room at that moment. She was elegant, about my age, with well-kept gray hair and gentle eyes. This is my wife, Estella, said Ricardo. Estella, this is Aurora. The Aurora I told you about. Estella smiled warmly and extended her hand. The famous Aurora. Ricardo has told me about you many times over the years, his first great passion. I didn't know if I should be embarrassed, but there was so much kindness in Estella's eyes that the tension disappeared. In the following weeks, as the treatment began, I learned about Ricardo's life. After we were separated, he went to Rio de Janeiro, studied software engineering, and built a successful telecommunications company. He married Estella 35 years ago, had 3 adult children, and 6 grandchildren. And you? He asked one afternoon, while the extraction was taking place. What became of your life, Aurora? I told him everything about my brief and disastrous marriage to Helena and Albert's father, about raising my children alone, about my 28 years working in maintenance, about how I ended up in the shelter, expelled by my own daughter. As I spoke, I saw emotions cross Ricardo's face. Anger, sadness, and something that looked like guilt. I should have fought harder for us, he said when I finished. I should have looked for you afterward. We were both young, I replied softly. We did what we thought was right at the time. Estella, who had been sitting in a corner of the room reading, looked up. Ricardo has told me about you many times over the years. He always wondered what might have been. She smiled softly. I'm not jealous. I know he loves me, but I also know he never forgot you. That honesty, that openness on her part, touched me deeply. As the weeks passed, something strange began to happen. Ricardo's health began to improve dramatically. His color returned, his energy levels increased. The doctors were surprised by how well he was responding to the treatment. It's as if his body recognized your enzymatic factors as its own, Dr. Marina said, marveling. I have never seen such perfect compatibility. Ricardo and Estella began to invite me to dinner at their house once a week. They lived in a luxurious penthouse in the city's most expensive neighborhood, but they never made me feel inferior. Estella cooked delicious dishes, and Ricardo told stories about his travels around the world. One evening, while helping Estella in the kitchen after dinner, she told me something that changed my perspective on everything. Aurora, she said softly. I want you to know that I don't see you as the woman my husband loved before me. I see you as the woman who is saving his life now. And for that, I will love you forever. Tears streamed down my face. No one, not even my own daughter, had expressed such gratitude and affection for me in years. In the 8th week of treatment, Dr. Marina called me to her office again. This time, Ricardo and Estella were also there. Aurora, Ricardo said, his voice strong now, none of the weakness he had when we first met again. The doctors say I am in complete remission. I'm going to live because of you. I'm going to watch my grandchildren grow up. I'm going to grow old with Estella. All because of you. He stood up from his chair, something he couldn't have done 2 months ago, and walked toward me. Estella and I have talked a lot about this. The $250,000 we offered you are not enough. He handed me an envelope. Inside, there was a legal document. We transferred $3 million to an account in your name. It's our way of thanking you for giving us more time together. $3 million. I couldn't process the numbers. It was an amount of money I had never imagined owning. Ricardo, Estella, I can't accept this, I began. Yes, you can, Estella interrupted firmly. And you will accept it because you deserve it. Because your daughter treated you abominably, because you spent your life giving to others, and now it is time for someone to give something back to you. That night, sitting in my apartment, I looked at the bank statement that Dr. Marina had helped me print, $3 million. I was rich. For the first time in my life. I wouldn't have to worry about money. I could do anything, go anywhere, be anyone. But the first thing I thought about wasn't myself, it was Albert, about how he kicked me out, about how he treated me as if I were disposable. And then I had a realization. I didn't owe him anything. I didn't have to tell him about my money, I didn't have to share it with him. For the first time in my life, I could choose to put myself first. 3 days later, as I was walking through the mall looking for furniture for a new apartment I was thinking of renting, I saw him, Helena and Albert. He was in a cheap shoe store, looking at price tags with a worried expression. He was thinner than the last time I saw him, with deep dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, I considered turning around and leaving. But then he saw me. Mom. His voice sounded surprised, perhaps even hopeful. He quickly approached. Mom, I was thinking of calling you. Things have been so difficult. He finally got a job, but the pay is terrible. We are out of electricity, things are very difficult. The children ask about you. I let him talk, watching his face. I could see the calculation behind his eyes, the hope that maybe I had found a job, that maybe I could help him again. How much do you need? I asked abruptly. He blinked in surprise. What money? Is that why you're telling me all this, aren't you? How much do you need? His face flushed. Mom, it's not like that. We are really struggling. If you could lend us maybe $200, just until I get paid. 2 months ago, he kicked me out of the house with nothing, and now he was asking for money. I looked at my son, this man I raised, for whom I sacrificed so much, and realized that I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel hatred, I didn't feel anything. He had become a stranger to me. No, Albert, I said calmly. His eyes widened. But Mom, no. You kicked me out when I needed you most. You sent me to a shelter in the middle of a storm. You decided I had no value because I couldn't contribute financially. Well, now I won't contribute financially to you. But I'm your son. And I was your mother. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Please. He whispered, tears in his eyes. The children. If you really cared about the children, you wouldn't have kicked their grandmother out at the worst moment of her life. You wouldn't have treated me like disposable trash. I pulled free from his grasp and walked away, leaving him standing there in the shoe store, finally understanding what he had lost. After a few days, I thought better of it. The grandchildren were not to blame for what happened with my daughter, so I went to her house and invited all my grandchildren to go out with me. I went to the mall and bought clothes and new shoes for everyone. We also went to the supermarket. I bought a large amount of food and everything they wanted to buy. Yes, they were very grateful and happy. I saw that I could do this once a month to help my grandchildren who loved me and were not to blame for the father they had. When I arrived back with them, Helena and Albert were surprised, and he even criticized me. You asked me for money that day and you didn't want to lend it to me, and now you bought all this for them. Yes, I replied, my grandchildren are not to blame for you not respecting your mother. But now I'm leaving, and there's no point in asking me for money.